topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, good afternoon. Glad you could join us. If you've been a follower of our show, you know my heart towards veterans, and particularly military, being a former United States Marine Corps Marine. You have some understanding, and especially when it comes to Memorial Day, we often talk about what a hallowed day that is and how difficult it's been for me over the years. So often the casual response to Memorial Day was Happy Memorial Day. And I just did not seem appropriate to me to say Happy Memorial Day, because I've always coming, from a military family, so to speak. Our dad served in World War II. He was a medic in the European theater, was at the Battle of the Bulge with Patton as a medic. And and three of his sons, including myself and my two older brothers, served in three other branches of the government. Well, except my second oldest brother served in the Army as my dad served in the Army. My oldest brother was career Air Force. And then here the third son, in the United States Marine Corps. So everything that has to do with veterans and our love for country and patriotism, it's something that was very much entwined in our lives. And you've heard me say on the show that it's very difficult for me when I think of Memorial Day, because I just feel the loss, not having a direct loss myself, but just feeling an incredible amount of empathy for parents and families that, Memorial Day is a hallowed day. And when I met George Lutz for the first time, and we were talking about his book, Tragedy to Tribute, he said something that really has stayed with me ever since we talked about this. And he says, Bill, he says, for Gold Star families, every day is Memorial Day. And I said, George, exactly. Every day is Memorial Day. And when George lost his son, Tony, in 2005 while serving in Iraq, he entered a world no parent ever wants to know. You can imagine that, becoming a Gold Star father. But out of unimaginable grief came an unshakable mission. With faith and fierce resolve, George turned sorrow into purpose by creating the Honor and Remember flag. It's a national symbol dedicated to recognizing the sacrifice of our fallen service members. In a country where symbols matter, even still, George is doing what no one has done before, establishing a unified, tangible way for America to say thank you sincerely to the families whose loved ones gave everything for our freedom. Join us right now as we welcome George Lutz, the author of the book, Tragedy to Tribute. George Lutz, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Bill. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this story. It's so important to so many.
Well, it really is. And again, I echo and I've shared with people ever since we first met, George, that, every day is Memorial Day. And it just so, rhymed with my reason and connected in my spirit, because I said, yes, exactly. And it explains something that I couldn't put in words. I couldn't express before. All I knew was that there was some incongruity and there was just some mismatch about Memorial Day and a lack of reverence that I felt like all America should have towards, towards Gold Star families, toward those that paid the ultimate price. And that needs to be recognized more than just one day a year.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, we enjoy the freedoms that we have been given every single day, right? All of those freedoms to say what we want, to move about the country, to be able to, to carry arms, all of those things that are given to us because somebody stood up and said, here I am, take me, right? I am
Right.
willing to put my life on the line, from the land that I own, from my family who lives there. And so, in my journey of just, obviously of grieving when it started for me,
Mhm.
and the opportunity that I've had, the blessing I've had to meet, thousands of Gold Star family members from every generation, and realizing that they are grieving every single day.
Yeah.
And everything triggers them, Bill. It could be a favorite song. It could be a letter that they just found. It could be a piece of clothing. And it's not just the day they died, but it's their birthday, the day they graduated from high school, the day they got married, whatever it might be that triggers that for a family member, they have to live that for the rest of their lives. And these men are all, and women are very all similar. They're very giving of themselves. They're very selfless. They wanted to do something better,
Mhm.
in their lives. And so they could have stayed home.
Right.
My son could have stayed home. He was a really smart kid. He was a marketer, a salesman.
Mhm.
He was already buying and selling cars, and he was getting his real estate license, and he'd already had one. He was married and had a child. I mean, he gave all that up because he saw that something horrendous was going on in the world, and he believed he can make a difference. It's the same story, one hero after another. And I really think that we as Americans, we've never had a way to appreciate that or even acknowledge that,
Exactly.
until this flag was created.
Well, George, as I've been sharing this flag, as I told you, I just got my flag here recently. And as I've been sharing with people, it's amazing how it touches them.
Mm,
What you've done with this flag, as you say, symbols mean something in our country. This is why our flag means so much, and why I got to tell you, I resent. I'll tell you up front, I resent the Supreme Court decision that says people are free to burn our flag.
right,
I cannot handle it because it is the flag that we all stood and gave an oath of office to that
sure,
never expires when you enter the military,
right,
right? And like your son, you know, um, there's something in there when you come and receive that call and you respond to it. You say, "Hey, if not me, then who?"
right,
And that's what Tony
exactly.
did, right? You mean, it's and you talk to him. Maybe you can tell us a little bit of the story about when Tony said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to enter the military." What did you tell
Yeah,
him?
yeah. I mean, Tony was his own man, as I said, right? He thought on his own. He had his own dreams and aspirations, and he was living, apart from us, not too far away. And he came in the door one Saturday morning and said, "Hey, Dad, I joined the army, and I'm leaving for boot camp, next Saturday." I mean,
Wow.
that was as quick as it was. I mean, he never asked my opinion. He didn't ask my advice. I mean, he already was on his own trajectory.
Hmm.
And, I just looked at him and I said, "Tony, are you crazy?" I said, "There was a war going on. We had just started going into Iraq in '03.
Hmm.
And this was when he came to me, right in the spring of '03. And he said, "Dad, I've got a skill set that I believe can make a difference." He said, "I believe that the women and children of Iraq are being oppressed, and I can make a difference."
Hmm.
And so, what could I say? I mean, I couldn't argue him out of it. He already made his decision. So
Right.
I just wrapped my arms around him. I gave him a big hug. I told him that I loved him, and I told him to keep his head down.
Yeah.
And that's all a father can do, right? Just be
Right.
proud.
Yeah. Exactly. Was Tony affected by 9/11?
He was. It was after 9/11, as so many were,
Hmm.
that he recognized that the horrific nature of that attack, and he talked about it and talked about it. And yeah, he was. And I think he made that decision. I mean, within a year and a half later, right? He
Hmm.
was he had enlisted. But
Right.
he only wanted to be in the U.S. Army. He only wanted one job, Bill, and that was psychological operations.
Mhm.
It was a job that he felt was very much aligned with his marketing kind of sales background,
Uh-huh.
and he thought that he was an influencer, in and of himself, and he thought that that job description would fit him to a T. And most people don't test into it from civilian life. They
Right.
have to be already enlisted and then they move into it.
Right.
And he was his test scores were so high that he actually tested right into that MOS.
Oh, wow. So he pretty much had his choice at that point.
Yes.
I mean, how did he know about PSYOP? I mean, he's not even in the military. I mean, I get it. I mean, I've been in marketing most of my life and sales and that. So I understand that, but I would have never thought. Of course, when I went in the military, I had a broadcasting background. So the ironic thing for me, George, is that, well, of course, I had two brothers already in Vietnam. I'd have been the third one. And so it's like Saving Private Ryan, that scenario. And the Marine Corps says, "Oh, you've been in radio. We're going to make you a field radio operator." I said, "No, you don't understand. That's not the same kind of radio. I was juvenile playing records, taking dedications, telling people about the weather, kind of deal. Not announcing bombing coordinates." And but anyway, as things would work out and as God would design, because it was a God deal totally, I ended up working for public relations. And basically was the voice of Camp Pendleton and did my humble version of Good Morning Camp Pendleton for my service, to the country. But it was, it was interesting. But just to think, I would never have thought, I would not have known anything about a PSYOP opportunity in the Marine Corps. But
Well,
go ahead.
Come to find out that he had researched every branch of the service.
Mm-hmm.
And he had researched every job description.
Well, good for him. Wow.
And he actually found this, because he wanted to serve so badly. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Once he found it, he said, "This is what I want to do."
So, George, did he have this sense of mission to think that in terms of PSYOP is taking, if we might say, the gospel message of freedom of America to Iraq? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I mean, I guess in a sense that he thought that the PSYOP opportunity would enable him to make a dent in bringing resolution, mm-hmm. right? And bringing resolution to the conflict, right. Because they wanted to make a difference. And he was actually involved in the first free elections in Iraq. He was only in there for 6 weeks before he died. But in those 6 weeks, he actually was an influencer and actually stood at the ready when they had their first free elections. So he actually did make a difference.
So he did a lot in 6 weeks' time. That's amazing, George.
Yeah. He loved PSYOP so much, and one of the reasons he liked it so much was because he was just this lowly private when he went in, right? Mm-hmm. And when he got in there, because PSYOPs is a 3-man team, it's only a 3-man team that are assigned to Marines. He actually was with the 2-6 Marines when he died. But he was able to influence colonels in the Marines because they listened to the PSYOPers.
Yes.
And he was just so proud of the fact that he would say to me, "Dad, I've got colonels who actually value my opinion." And he was a smart kid. He was 25 when he died. He wasn't, in his teens.
Right.
So he had experienced life already and had a lot of common sense. So he was in something that really clicked with him, that mm-hmm. really resonated and he was really proud of, and he was listened to.
Right. Well, and I think that is really the goal of every humanoid, is you want to do what your design calls you to do. Tony was designed to do this. And as he did his research, he discovered pretty quickly that this is where he needed to be. And this was the branch of service that he needed to be. So he was right where, where his own spirit, his own soul, where it matched up. And I know in counseling young men and employment opportunities and that, I often say you got to find that round peg that your round hole fits into.
Sure.
Because if you're if you're a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, those points of resistance are going to cause friction. You're not going to be a happy camper, and everybody else around you is not going to be happy. So obviously, George Tony was such that he was so fulfilled in that duty and acknowledged by the brass, and not only that, but that he was blessed with being very effective, and that's amazing in a 6-week period. So obviously, before he got to Iraq, was he, how much time was he spending here in the country and training in that then?
Right. So he enlisted in 2003, and then he went through his basic training. He went through his AIT training. He started learning his language. He went to language school. And so a year and a half later, after all of his training, as he was getting ready to deploy, they knew they would deploy at some point.
Right.
Right. So what happened was in 2005, in the summer of 2005, he had his second child in early August. And then he was right away deployed to Louisiana, where he was effectively doing search and rescue after Hurricane Katrina. And so he went down there as kind of this test case, with their Humvees and, their high water, gear, and went down there to find bodies. But one of the things, in using his training, they were able to do was he actually, 2 weeks after the event, they were actually able to rescue 2 ladies who had been hidden up in an attic for over 2 weeks. And he told me after that deployment, he actually was deployed to Louisiana. That was one of the most rewarding, moments of his life. They were doing their thing, loudspeakers and all the things that psyops do. And when they found these women, they were able to put them in touch with their families via satellite phone. Of course, there wasn't any power or anything that was, accessible at that point. And the families were already planning the funerals of these 2 elderly ladies. So, this was just the point that, he realized that, hey, I'm doing something I really love to do.
Exactly.
Right. This is something I'm being a part of. I'm being effective. I'm using my training and I'm making a difference. And I think that really validated him, as he moved into deployment just a few short months later.
Right. So here he is. He's got 2 kids. He goes to Iraq, and George, when you got the news that you had lost Tony, share that with our audience if it's not too personal.
Well, it's emotional. It'll be 20 years, Bill, this year.
Yes.
And, I remember vividly that morning, I was out for a morning walk, in the backyard. And, it was just a crisp December morning. And as I was walking to the back, to enter the back of the house, I looked over to the driveway to the left and I saw this, this kind of nondescript white van sitting in the driveway. And, there wasn't any markings on it that I could tell from that distance.
Right.
And I thought, well, it's early in the morning. It was probably about 7:30 in the morning, a little early for anybody to be visiting.
Right.
And it was just after Christmas. And so I went in the back door and I walked through the living room, and my mom who was staying with us at the time, had the door, open. And there were these two guys in uniform standing on the front stoop, of the porch. And, she's looking at me, I'm looking at them. And she goes, well, what should I do? And I said, just let him in, Mom. Just let him in.
Yeah.
And so I ushered him into the main room. I yelled for my wife upstairs.
So they haven't said anything to you, but you're sensing this is not good news.
Something's going on, right? Something's going on, because I'm thinking it has to do with Tony, obviously. These are Army soldiers. I'm thinking in my head, maybe Tony's hurt, I'm thinking maybe they're at the wrong house.
Yeah, anything.
Right?
Yeah.
So my wife was getting ready for work upstairs, and I just called for her to stop what she was doing and come downstairs. And of course, once she got down there, they pulled out this piece of paper and, started reading. But essentially, what they were delivering were those 5 words no parent wants to hear. We regret to inform you.
Yeah.
And so, what happened after that was pretty much of a blur.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do now? Where is he? Right. Are we gonna be able to see him? What about our kids? I have 5 children. They weren't at the house. What about our kids? How are we going to tell them? What are we going to do next? I mean, all of those things that you don't ever, as a parent, want to have to consider. Yeah.
So as you're going through this journey, just like you said, something that no parent wants to hear or be involved in, and part of the healing process, I don't know if you ever get healed from this per se, but I guess just the process. I think you and I talked about this before when I was talking with a dear friend who lost a son. He told me, he says, Bill, you never get over it, but you get through it.
Right.
And I thought that was insightful. And as you are going through that process, dealing with all the questions that you got hit with in a flashpoint, what do we do? What about his siblings? What about his children, his wife, all this, and, funeral arrangements, all this. So as you go through all that and you're able to catch your breath, you begin to realize, because your son was a man of purpose, that there was no way your son was going to, in any way possible, even on the other side of this human existence, he wasn't going to let you grieve yourself to death, so to speak, but that he was going to inspire you with a purpose that heretofore you probably never would have thought about in a million years. But his legacy left you with a passion and a purpose to do something and to create a flag, to create a movement that heretofore has just been kind of waiting for some leadership and a vision to kind of coalesce the hearts of Gold Star families. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the next 2 weeks after his death, were pretty numbing.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the things that we had to go through. He was killed on December 29th. He was buried on January 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot had to happen, in that process.
Right.
And once we put him in the ground, the conversations in your head begin. What am I going to do next? What am I going to do at all? Do I even want to live?
Right.
Are just real serious questions, that have to be answered. They have to be asked and answered, and I was angry at God. I mean, I put yellow ribbons around all of my trees in the front yard, and I knew that now they were going to be black. And
Yeah.
so I was angry at God
I bet.
because God should have warned me. He should have given me some idea that this might happen, even though I joked with Tony, prior in our conversation
Right.
that, and so, I know that you're a spiritual man, and one of the things that I wrestled with, I mean, very adamantly and very emotionally with was, were the why questions that every family asks,
Of course.
The why and the what if. And so God just slapped me upside the head one day, very shortly. And he said, yeah, he said, I mean, as audibly as I could, imagine,
Mhm.
he said to me, "Hey, you know what? I know you're hurting. I know you're hurting."
Right.
He says, "I know what it feels like because I lost my son too."
Yeah. Mm.
And then he said, "I will tell you this, that your son and my son are together with me in paradise."
Oh, God.
And that's, Bill, that's
Mm.
all I needed,
Yeah.
because my selfishness at having lost him was dissolved. It was
Yeah.
dissolved. Not that I didn't miss him, not that I don't grieve over him, as you can tell,
Right.
but he was a spiritual man. The last conversation we had together, it's in the book, was on AOL Instant Messenger, where Tony said to me, typed out to me, "Dad, God is literally my shield."
Mm. Mm.
And so I knew that I didn't have to worry about him,
Yes.
right? I just had to worry about me, right?
Yeah.
And what I was going through. And that flipped the narrative. It flipped the narrative in a way that started me thinking about other families and what they were going through and how they were grieving and what was their assurance, and did they have their questions answered, and did anybody care?
Right.
I mean, that became the question. Did anybody care? Because, after he died, I did a lot of research because I wanted to hold on to something that would somehow salve my pain.
Mhm.
And part of that salve was knowing that he didn't die in vain, right? And that
Right.
somebody really cared, right? That America had some way of acknowledging that. And
Exactly.
this is the mission that I went on, to try to figure out how does America care? What do they do? What do they say? What could I embrace? I mean, I had the yellow ribbons. I
Yeah.
mean, I saw the support our troops, pray for our troops, but my son was no longer a troop, right?
Mhm.
So what did we do? I'll give you an example, if I might.
Yes. Go ahead.
Let's say there's only 100 soldiers, there's 100 troops, and we're back home going, support our troops, pray for our troops, you know, rah, 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 let's do what we can. And all but one die. Okay, we're still back here. And this is a real visual that I'm impressed with.
Mhm.
We're all still back here going, support our troops, pray for our troops, but most of them are gone. And
Right.
so we had no mechanism to remember the 99, only to remember the one.
Exactly.
The only mechanism we had, Bill, was Memorial Day. And as we've already talked about, that's not enough,
Mhm.
because the families think about their loved ones every single day.
Right.
We wear them around our necks.
Mhm.
We tattoo them, their names on our bodies. You know, it's all of that. But America doesn't understand, because, we're mostly apathetic. I mean, we're free to be apathetic,
Right.
but I thought, how do I cut through the apathy? and do it in a good way, in a positive
Right.
way, in a celebratory way.
Mhm.
You know, how do I?
And George, this is all coming together not only in your own mind, but as you're talking with other Gold Star families, right? And you're starting to connect the dots and seeing, okay, there's something consistent here. There's
Right.
something that needs to be done. Is that is that
Yeah,
fair? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because the first thing I started to do when I was realizing that other families were going through this was to start to visit other families. And so I began to attend military funerals. I live in a military town, so
Mhm.
I began to attend military funerals every time I heard of one. And in '05, '06, '07, those were horrible years. You
Yes.
know, we were losing a lot of our service members. And I attended a lot of funerals and I got to know those families. I got to hug on them, to cry with them, to hear their stories, to let them know they weren't alone. And then I started to meet heroes' families who died before Tony, you know, all the way to World War II.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, I
Mhm.
was meeting children. You know, I was meeting mothers from Vietnam. You know, from Korea. I was meeting all generations of families. And the one thing the families wanted to know more than anything was that their loved one wasn't forgotten. And
Right.
and so this resonated with me over and over. Well, how come they're thinking that? You know, what is it about that resonates so much with them? I mean, and why aren't they remembered? You know, where was the missing piece? And and after Tony died, I started receiving gifts in the house. You know, people just sent things to us. You know, they would send on a folded flags. They would send photographs. They would send greeting cards. They would send marble statues. I mean, anything and everything. Quilts, um,
Mm.
paintings, and I would get these things, and I'd go, "Oh wow, this is nice," but you know, I'm not a taker.
Right.
I don't like to get things. I
Right.
don't like attention.
Yeah.
You know, the only reason I'm doing this is because there's not many others doing it, right?
Mhm.
And so I realized that I wanted to give a gift. I didn't want to get them, I wanted to give them, but I didn't know what that gift was. And the more families I spoke to, and now I've spoken to thousands of families, Bill, thousands of
And you've
families.
and in all 50 states you've deployed to, right?
I've been to all 50 states, and if we have a moment, I'll tell you about my trip to Ukraine to talk about those families.
Oh, wow. Yes, yes. Okay.
But but uh, but I realized I wanted to give a gift after speaking to all of these families, and I wanted that gift to be remembrance. And I didn't know what that looked like. I just know I wanted to give it.
Mm.
And so after attending funerals and talking to families and looking at different gifts I was getting, I knew it wasn't about just writing a story or going on television and telling my loss. It had to be something permanent. It had to be
Mhm.
something legacy minded.
Right.
And and the one thing that I kept running into when I went to these funerals were flag lines. I
Mhm.
kept seeing, you know, lines of U.S. flags, you know, at the funeral with
Exactly.
veterans, right, standing there, right. And so I kept going. I need to, I need to do something like this. And what I finally realized was the fallen needed a flag. We needed to, we needed to have a flag that represented our nation's fallen service members.
Now, when that
And
idea coalesced in your mind, was that like 3 o'clock in the morning kind of idea, or was it how did, how did the idea of this flag? Because I mean, this is just it's so awesome. It's almost like I have this sense that God Himself said, "Hey, I got the symbol for you."
right, right. It's such a mishmash of processes in my brain. It's
Uh,
hard it's hard to articulate exactly what that was, but I was a grieving dad. I'm an introvert, believe it or not. I didn't want to do it, but this idea came to me. We need a flag. We have flags for everything in this country. We have our US flag that represents our country. We have our POW flag that represents our fallen and missing. every branch of the service has a flag. Every college and university has a flag. Everybody has a flag. We even have a flag on the golf course that directs your golf ball. And I thought, the one flag we're missing, the one flag we needed, is a flag that represents the people who enable us to fly every other flag. If you look at it that way.
Yes.
And so I didn't want to do it. I just wanted the idea to be taken and somebody to do it. So I started floating it around and saying, hey, what do you think of this? And to my veteran friends, I'm thinking of we need a flag. And, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And so I finally wrote to my congressman, and my congressman came back, months later and said, well, we've asked around and the American flag is enough, so we don't need any other flags. And honestly, I was devastated. I thought,
I bet.
I went, come on, guys, men and women are losing their lives. We need to how are we recognizing them? You tell me how we're recognizing them, and I'll embrace that, right? That symbol. And so I was deflated for months and months and months until another conversation with God, came from a word at church. We went and visited to another church, and the preacher, gave me a word from God and said, God has told me to tell you that you are about to be launched on something that you never expected. Buckle your seatbelt, because you're going to be launched. So get ready.
The countdown has begun.
and I went, what? My wife and I looked at each other and go, what is he talking about?
Yeah, this is out of nowhere, right? That he makes this pronouncement.
This is out of nowhere,
right?
Completely out of nowhere. And so my wife says, well, maybe he's talking about the flag. And I go, nobody wants the flag. I go, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not talented enough to do it. I don't have the skill set. And so the next day, in my prayer time, I said, okay, God, are you talking about the flag? And he said, if you think it's important, then you have to do it. And if you do it, then I will walk with you every step of the way.
Wow.
And I just went, whoa. I said, yeah, I do think it's important. And this was in February of 2008. And by May, everything fell into place, Bill. I had the nonprofit organized. I had my board complete. I had a website in development. I had the whole process of the flag designed. And on Memorial Day of 2008 is when I unveiled it publicly to the nation to become our nation's national symbol of remembrance.
Well, and today, fast forward, we're 28 state legislatures?
29 state
29
legislatures.
now. Wow. Awesome.
2 weeks ago, we got New Hampshire.
Well, congratulations. That's great news. I didn't get that report, so I'll add that to the list. And so slowly but surely they're coming around. As I mentioned to you, George, I believe this is why God brought us together, and that we're to take it to another level. And of course, as I mentioned to you, I'm heavily involved with the Knights. I'm a faithful navigator for Palm City in Florida, and the fourth degree, the Sir Knights, the fourth degree of the Knights of Columbus, our central principle is patriotism. And so when I presented this to several of the board members, right away, they didn't hesitate whatsoever. Said, yeah, we're in, get the flag.
Yeah.
And so we got the flag, and we're going to proudly carry it at every patriotic event and parade that the Knights are involved with. I'm talking with other assemblies as well to get them involved. I just so believe in what you're doing. And now to hear the background, now this even makes even much more sense into why God has connected us. And, I'll tell you, I'm honored. I'm honored to co-labor with you to this end, George.
Well, thank you. I mean, as I go through this, I have my roller coaster ride, Bill.
Of course.
There's a lot out there that, they don't understand the depth of what this really and truly means. I mean, I believe, and I try not to sound prideful at all, but I believe we're on the precipice of raising the level of patriotism in this country, because we've never stopped to recognize the lives that have been given for this country in such a magnanimous way.
Exactly.
Because we've relegated them to a day that nobody remembers, and so it's not a piece of cloth. It's an opportunity for every citizen in America to stand up and say thank you to the people they don't know who gave them the freedoms that they enjoy every day.
Exactly.
And so if you look at it in a way that goes beyond even history, it's that we're coming to our 250th anniversary of our country's birth. But I don't hear anybody talking about the sacrifice that was given to get to 250 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so those lives should be celebrated just as vehemently as the birth of our nation, because they didn't get to come home and be veterans. They didn't get to come home and raise their families and to contribute in whatever career level that they were a part of. Tony would have made a heck of a difference in this life if he would have had a chance to come home. But now that he's gone, I think the difference he's making in his life is through this vision, of what we have now.
Right.
But if you look at all of the things that are being done for only a few, right? If you look at post offices that are being named for our heroes, roads and bridges and different entities, there's scholarship programs, but they're only for a few names. There's not, everybody can't possibly be remembered. There isn't enough real estate in our country to name everything after everybody.
Right.
And then there's families who will never come out of the woodwork and even let you know that they exist.
Exactly.
Because if you think about the Vietnam era, they stopped talking about their loved one's death. They didn't go out and tell their neighbors. They didn't make a big deal about it because they wouldn't even let their own children talk, their other children, their siblings talk about it because it was too painful.
Right.
And that has happened through generations.
Exactly. Well, George, you think about it, and we do talk about it on this show. We say I think we're at 1.2 million Americans who have paid the ultimate price going back to the American Revolution. 1.2 million. And as you say, there are family members that are still associated with the 1.2 million, going back. Their heritage and legacy goes back to the American Revolution. And why shouldn't they be part of this honor? To date, you've presented nearly 6,000 honor and remember flags to Gold Star families. There's a lot of Gold Star families out there, and this honor and remember flag is just, it just touches your heart, and I know it's such a gift for those families. They cherish that because it's like it's part of their loved one that has been lost. It's an ongoing remembrance, and I want those families to know that they're not alone, that there are millions of other Americans who are participating and sharing in their grief and their memory. And this is why it's so important to hear Tony's story. And, I was hoping we were going to have more time to even talk, because you've been so blessed to talk to other Gold Star families and to hear their stories. And we have to do that is, have you back, George, so we can talk about these other stories as well, because this is what America is all about. I mean, but for them, we're not here today. We're not enjoying the freedoms that are guaranteed, God-given and guaranteed and clarified in case you had any doubt in our Constitution and Declaration of Independence. George, we got about 4 minutes left here, and I want to appeal to our audience because this show goes out, across the country and around the world. And for those that are in tune with what we're talking about, I want them to engage and to join this movement of honoring those every day, not just on Memorial Day, but every day, to honor their ultimate sacrifice that they paid so that, we can go out and, enjoy time with our family, go to a ball game, do these things that, Tony can't do here in the here and now, and others who have paid that ultimate price. And I just think what you've done, for all of us here in coalescing the sentiment and the honor behind this flag, George. I mean, this is such a blessing. And I know people who contribute and who will participate in this movement, that they will be greatly blessed, because with these flags, you are blessing others. You're blessing other families. You're blessing other patriots in our country who may not have lost a loved one, but it will cause them to remember that our freedoms came at a price, right?
Right. And I mean, we can, go into the long discussion of survivor's guilt. And it's not just the families that have lost, but it's the comrades, right, that
Right.
lost their brethren and what they're going through. And some of those that have never even spoken to the families because it's been too painful.
Exactly.
You talk about almost 6,000 flags being presented. Well, those are just the flags that were requested. Bill, can you imagine the families that may not even know to request a flag that we haven't touched? Those are the ones that have come out of the woodwork, so to speak, and said,
Right.
hey, I want to be recognized, in this way. And so there's thousands more, to be reached, but then tens of thousands will never give a flag to.
Mm-hmm.
That's why flying the flag, if you want to activate your audience, is that they should get an honor and remember flag and put it on a flagpole.
Exactly.
Right? Because you are going to reach so many more thousands of people that go by your flagpole than you might ever know in person. And so that's the visual I want to see across this country, is
Amen.
Thousands of flags flying on thousands of poles, so that thousands of families will recognize the fact that, hey, that business, they get it. Oh, that church, they get it. That school, they get it. Whatever it might be, that entity, that Home Depot, that Wendy's, that Chick-fil-A, whatever it might be, we're sending messages of thanks across the entire network of this world.
George, when people fly the flag, can they take a picture and send it to the website?
They can send it to our email address.
Okay.
Just if you go to honorandremember.org, our website,
Right.
Honorandremember.org, all spelled out. At the bottom is our contact information. I would love to see pictures of flags all over this country.
Well, and also hit the donate button, because we need donations. These, buy a flag. There's different formats of the flag that you can fly in your yard, as George was saying. Bigger flags for those that, like us, that are going to be using it on our parade events. This will fly very proudly alongside the American flag. And again, we've got Gold Star families that are still waiting to be presented their honor and remember flags. And, you need budget. This is not, this isn't cheap. I mean, when you see these flags, I mean, they're very nicely done. They're great quality, George. I mean, they really look good. And, and I know when anybody has it, I mean, they just, because it represents so much,
right,
all in this flag, like you say, this symbol that it represents. It's almost hard to put it all in words, right?
Every life. That's why it's so important. It specifically represents every life given in America for our freedom.
Well, we've got to wrap things up. George Lutz, the founder of Honor and Remember, a national nonprofit dedicated to permanent public recognition of every U.S. service member who died in the line of duty. Go to the website. Do they go to tragedytotribute.org or they go to honorandremember.org?
Well, either one will get you to either one.
Okay.
Tragedytotribute.org is the book specifically, but it'll also take you to honorandremember.org, where you'll learn more about about what we're doing. There's thousands of pictures of flags presented to families, and much more about what we have going.
And for everybody in our audience, thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for coming alongside George Lutz and his family and all the other Gold Star families out there that look at every day of their lives until the day they die is Memorial Day. And this is such a very special way to honor each of those that have paid the price. George Lutz, thank you so much for being with us. Godspeed, my friend. I look forward to seeing what else we can do to come alongside and help the effort of Honor and Remember. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Bill. God bless you.
God bless. And you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing a part of your day with us. You've got the website, and I look forward to hearing, about a great response to come alongside these very special Gold Star families that the price that they've paid and the price that they will pay until they die. How do you possibly repay that? But to say thank you, and if you can participate and donate and fly the Honor and Remember flag, God bless you. And whatever influence you may have, like Tony had, whatever you can do as an influencer to get your city, your state, whatever, to come along and proudly fly the Honor and Remember flag would be much appreciated. Thank you for being with us. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you his peace. God bless. Take care.